Welcome to the Bookers Alliance podcast, where we hold the pencil and the pencil is power. Coming at you right now is your host, Marky Mark, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Donaldson. Join us as we discuss the ever-changing landscape of professional wrestling. So hang on tight, you jabronis, and enjoy the ride. All right, welcome in, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Bookers Alliance podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the man that was the American Dream, Americana himself, the son of a plumber, Mr. Dusty Rhodes. And as always, got my co-host here with me, got Mr. Frank. And we got a crowd in the studio with us today, so we're all hyped for the topic. Live studio going. Right. Frank, how we doing today, man?
Oh, I'm good. I can't complain. I definitely can't complain. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. I'm excited to talk about the common man.
The common man.
The common man. Dusty.
And speaking of the common man, we know that Dusty is no longer with us, so we wanted to start out the episode today paying our respects to the man. And so let's crack open a frosty.
We got to pop a top for Dusty.
Yeah, we got to pop a top. R.I.P. Dusty. Absolutely. So, Dusty, we thank you, sir, for everything you attributed to the pro wrestling community. And we wanted to acknowledge you and give you your flowers today. And we're going to talk about Dusty in three different phases here. We're going to talk about the NWA Dusty. We'll talk about WWE Dusty. And then we're going to talk about NXT Dusty.
All right.
So NWA Dusty, where did that start? Back in the 80s, you think? 70s? Late 70s?
Late 70s, he was in Florida Championship Wrestling, and that kind of morphed into NWA. So He was, mid to late 70s. So I don't know, 78, 79, 80. That's where his run really got started. So
yep. And believe it or not, everybody, Dusty was kind of fit when he first started.
Yeah.
He wasn't like body guy or nothing.
No, but he wasn't WWE Dusty either.
No.
The splotch wasn't as splotchy as it ended up being towards the end.
But Dusty came out and immediately what got Dusty on the map, promo skills, mic skills, that immediately got him on the map. Talking about, how his life had began in the business, and talking about how he was, the common man, the son of a plumber. That whole spin, it made him gravitate towards the audience.
Yeah, he knew how to talk to the crowd. He knew who his audience was. He talked the talk that they wanted to hear, and not too far away from a much later Stone Cold Steve Austin, who, bucked against authority and wanted to, he wanted to stun his boss. And, he related because how many people in the late 90s wish they could stun their boss or give him the finger or whatever the case may be. And Austin did that, and he learned that from Dusty. Dusty, again, he was a common man, and he brought that into the wrestling world where a bunch of common people were paying tickets to see these high-flying celebrities and whatnot. It made him a good fodder for Ric Flair, too, because you had Ric Flair talking about styling and profiling, limousine riding, lipstick kissing, wheeling and dealing. I don't want to steal all his lines, so I'm trying to make up new ones, but it ain't as easy as you think. But you had that, Ric Flair was glitz and glamour, so somebody had to be in the dirt. Somebody had to be in those trenches, and that's the role Dusty took.
Yeah, but even though he was in the trenches, boy, he had some fashion, though. He had coats going on at one point.
Ric Flair said it many times on his podcast, if Rick got a fur coat, Dusty had to get a furrier coat. Or if Rick got a Cadillac, Dusty had to get a bigger Cadillac. Yep. So they were always in that competition, but that wasn't Dusty's character. That was Dusty the man. That was Virgil Runnels there. But Dusty Rhodes, baby, he had to have the common man. He was the son of a plumber.
There you go.
I got to get my tongue out.
Ooh, wait a minute. I thought Dusty was in the room.
I got to get my tongue out to get the list. But Dusty Rhodes, baby, he thought he the common man. He got to be the common man. Yeah, baby.
I love it. I give you a 10 out of 10.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody's got a Dusty impression.
Yeah,
so
not me.
Mine might not be exactly on par, but get that tongue out there. You can get that lisp going, that Cody Rhodes lisp.
So NWA Dusty, the biggest rivalry, of course, NWA Ric Flair. Ric
Four
Flair
Horsemen.
and his cohorts, the Four Horsemen.
Oh, yeah.
So usually the Four Horsemen, when we talk about the Four Horsemen, we're talking about Rick, we're talking about Arn, we're talking about Tully, and we're talking about Barry. That would be the Four
That's the
Horsemen.
best incarnation.
Agreed. And that's, usually we disagree on things, but hey, we'll agree on that.
Hey, we've
one.
been agreeing on that horseman
That one,
thing.
hey, we need a toast. To
All
that.
right, there you go.
We agree
Toast
on
it up.
Toast to the
All right.
horseman there, sir. Absolutely. So the biggest rivalry was there with Dusty and Flair going with the Four Horsemen. Now, the Four Horsemen did something very despicable to Dusty. What do you remember about that?
Now see, I remember that we were talking before the show about me not being on my WCW history, but I remember when they broke Dusty's leg. When they broke Dusty's leg. I remember reading that through magazines. I didn't see a lot of NWA, WCW back then, but I can remember seeing that and having to go back and watch. Like, whoa, they broke this man's leg. Like, you don't see that a lot in wrestling. Not on purpose. We didn't get a lot of those storylines in the '80s WWE because it was more cartoony. It was more geared for kids. But when you're hearing like, man, they broke this guy's leg. Yeah. How bad did they beat him down? So then you turn on the 605 on a Saturday night, you turn on WTBS Atlanta and see it. You're like, my God, look at them thugs out there, beating this guy down. Well, now automatically you're sympathetic to Dusty. Like, man, he's one guy and it took 4 men plus a manager to beat this guy down. And now they broke his leg and took his career. So yeah, instant babyface reaction there from a kid.
Yeah. And that led into one of the biggest storylines that I remember as a kid. Him going up against Ric Flair and trying to get retribution for kind of what they did to him there. And one of the first matches that I remember, dig back through the archives, you'll hear me tell this story, but I remember seeing Rick and Dusty go at it over here in Charlotte. And I remember just how loud the crowd was and how invested everybody was because they wanted to see Rick get his ass beat. They wanted to see that man go down, and Dusty was the comment man, the man of the people, and he was going to lay the smack down on Rick that night.
Yeah, Rick had to get his comeuppance. I mean, that was the formula. You got a hot heel that does some heinous stuff, and then all of a sudden, the babyface gets his comeback sometime or another. And especially here in Carolina, being in the heart of Flair country, you wouldn't expect them to, be so against Flair, but that was the nature of that rivalry. I mean, Dusty was that sympathetic babyface that everybody wanted to see succeed. And Rick was just that highfalutin, top-notch guy that everybody wanted to see fail. So, I mean, their rivalry was a match made in heaven. It was perfect timing, perfect characters. They had the look they had, Ric Flair in 3-piece suits and, the long blonde hair. Then you got Dusty, who was a little heavy, baby. He was a little heavy there. So, they looked the parts that they played. Everything just went into that. It was like a formula that you couldn't dissect any other way.
Yeah, and then, he obviously got his win against the Four Horsemen. But then, in there, he was kind of booking a little bit, as they say, within the old NWA, WCW. He did a little bit of creation of shows. We know him for the Bash at the Beach. That was one of the shows that he created. And he also was the creator of War Games. Or as Regal would say, War Games.
Yeah. Now you got it. We almost need him in here to say that to bring up War Games. But I mean, Dusty would, if I remember right, he went in with the Road Warriors against the Four Horsemen at the War Games.
He did.
Who was their other partner? Do you remember?
Man, it could have been Sting. It could have been Lex. I can't remember who it was.
So initially I was thinking Magnum TA, but then I was like, that might have been after Magnum's time.
I think it was after Magnum.
Yeah, I think it was after Magnum's time.
He was in that car wreck, and I don't think he was passed.
Somebody out there knows. Somebody out there tweet us, message us, let us know who that other person was. But
what I do remember from that match is somebody from the Four Horsemen took a Road Warrior spike off of their entrance gear there and shoved it in Dusty's eye. That I do remember.
Yeah, they went. So again, kind of the same thing with the leg breaking. They went to an extreme, and it's like, my goodness,
But that was one of Dusty's things, though, was it had to be believable.
Yeah.
It had to be real. It had to be believable. incredible. And even though, they did their best to kind of put it all together, back then the curtain wasn't as far as pulled back as it is today.
No, God, no.
So back then a lot of people were looking at that going, oh my God, they just really got that dude and spiked his eye.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we learned in the A&E biography that they did on Dusty, that Dusty was even kayfabing the kids. Right. I mean, Dusty was in gimmick 24/7. He was walking around the neighborhood on it with a cast on his leg. Crutches and all that. So, I mean, the neighbors, the local people around, he was kayfabing them. He was living the gimmick, as Ric Flair would say.
Yeah.
And like you said, the curtain gets pulled back so far now, but I mean, that's part of a lost art too, is that living the gimmick. So kudos to like those like MJF who, lives the gimmick 24/7.
Yep.
Just because that's really a lost art of wrestling. And I don't mind, I don't dislike the curtain being pulled back to a point, but I'm older. So, it's different for me who's been a fan for 30 some years. The curtain had been pulled back, periodically. I've learned a lot, whether they intended for me to or not. But now it's just kind of out there, just like blow,
Too much.
Yeah, a little too much.
So that was NWA Dusty. There's a lot there that we could continue to go on and on about, but let's go ahead and transition into the WWE Dusty.
Dusty Rhodes, polka dots Dusty. All right, the polka dots baby, yeah. Out there with his main lady, Sapphire.
Oh, I remember Sapphire, man.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that for a minute.
No, that's what I'm here for. I fill in the blanks. But yeah, Dusty Rhodes was out there with Sapphire. He had to have his main lady, a common woman with a common man. Uh-huh.
So what did we see Dusty do in WWE? What common man jobs did Dusty have?
And them vignettes they started off, Dusty was taking out the trash. He was a garbage man. He was a plumber. Hell, Dusty put roofs on houses. Anything Vince and the boys needed done to their house, all of a sudden Dusty was an expert. They would call out for some work to have done and put Dusty in a dirty tank top and some jeans and tell him, stand with these guys over here and act like you know what's going on. And Dusty would go out there and he'd cut a promo and end it with a big smile and just say, oh, that's so sweet.
That's so sweet. But his career in WWE, I don't think it was as magical as the career there in the NWA.
Yeah, well, so part one is what you just said. Dusty was a booker in NWA when he was there. When he was in WWE, he was just talent.
Right.
So he couldn't get himself into those angles. We didn't mention Dusty was a 3-time NWA heavyweight champion of the world.
That he was.
Dusty wasn't no heavyweight champion in WWE. He's just a heavyweight. But that,
come on now. Come on. Just a heavyweight?
Yeah, just a heavyweight. He's just a heavyweight. He wasn't no heavyweight champion. But when Dusty was in WWE, he got there during the Hulk Hogan run. There wasn't room at the top for any other baby faces to be the top guy. So, as much charisma, as much, everything that Dusty brought to the table, there wasn't room at the top at that point in time. Had he got there a few years later after Hulk left, before they went with the youth movement, there may have been room for Dusty in there. Or hell, had he got there before Hulk, had he went to WWF in 83, before Hulk Hogan got there, we may have never got Hulk Hogan. We may have only ever had the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. But the time that he got there, he was there in 89, 90, early 91 before he left. Yeah, when he was there for that, there just wasn't room for Dusty to be a top guy. So, he was a upper mid-card guy, but probably really different for him, to experience that after having been, top guy for almost a decade going into it. But probably also a little bit of relief. I've read in other places that Dusty said he had the most fun though in those years that he was in the WWF because he didn't have all that other responsibility.
Yeah, he was just able to just showcase as a talent.
Come to work, you go home. That was it. And that's all he had to worry about. There was no backstage. There was no drama. There was come to work, get your assignment, go out there and do what you do best, and wrap it up. So
and even though he may not have had some of those magic moments in the ring in WWE, his promos never fell off. He was always on lock when it came to putting a mic in front of his face.
Absolutely. Well, formula again. WWE was smart enough to put him against the characters he needed to be put up against to succeed. feuds he had in WWF at the time. Big Boss Man, who was a correctional officer who was, assaulting inmates and things like that. So who's going to stand up for these inmates that are getting assaulted? Common Man. The Macho King, Randy Savage. Who's the primary candidate to oppose a king?
Right.
The Common Man.
Common Man.
The $1 Million Man. Ted DiBiase. Everybody's got a price. Who's going to oppose him? The Common Man.
The Common Man.
So, they put him in the best positions to succeed for the type of character that he portrayed. But again, he just couldn't be Hulk Hogan because there was already Hulk Hogan in Hulk Hogan's spot.
I think you hit kind of the nail on the head there when you compared Dusty to Austin. The comparison there with how, Austin was the Common Man going against his boss of Vince. Yeah. Dusty was that character way before Stone Cold Steve
Way
Austin.
before. And I don't know if I've ever heard anybody else correlate those two together, but
no, I haven't
when you think about it, when you think it through. So Busted Open, when you guys shout this one out, or when you guys just happen to be going over Dusty and all of a sudden you find that correlation there, go ahead and cite your source next time.
There now.
Yeah, it's like next time, cite your source. And then, unlike previous times, go ahead and just say where you heard it. It's cool. But nonetheless, yeah,
Dave LaGreca, give us a call.
There you go. Right. We're always ready to guest star. We don't even have an appearance fee. We're here for it.
That's right. We do that for free.
We do that just for the promo. But nonetheless, yeah, like you said, Austin pulled a lot of things from Dusty, even if Austin doesn't know it. We know Austin, worked under Dusty in his WCW time. He learned something there because who didn't run into Dusty, on a day-to-day basis and not take something away?
Right.
And if you did do that, if you're that character that ran into Dusty or you had interactions with him and didn't take something away, damn you, because you killed yourself. You could have learned a lot. You could have done a lot better for yourself. Even Hulk Hogan said on the bio, he took a lot of stuff from Dusty. Yep. That's Hulk Hogan. That's the biggest name in wrestling, bar none.
Yep.
He readily admitted he took stuff from Dusty because he wanted to be Dusty at some time. Ric Flair said on his podcast he wanted to be Ramblin' Ricky Rhodes at one point in time because he had so much admiration for Dusty. He just wanted to get in on the gimmick because he wanted to supplement Dusty. Ric Flair, second biggest name in wrestling, bar none. It readily admits he took from Dusty. If you didn't take from Dusty, you're a fool. There's nothing else you can say. If you didn't take something from him, you're a fool.
So let's use that point and transition into our last point here that we're going to talk about today is the NXT Dusty. But let's rewind it just a little bit and talk about late WCW Dusty.
Oh, we can't forget that Dusty.
Yeah, because that Dusty had a huge impact when it came to Dustin Rhodes. Yep. And his career.
Dustin Rhodes. Let's go back. Let's go back to WWE. Let's not venture out of WWE just yet.
Yep.
Because Dustin actually got his WWE start with Dusty. In an angle with $1 Million Man and Virgil. They were outside of the ring watching a Saturday night's main event, I think it was, where they, basically beat up Dustin, and Dusty had to try and go out there and make the save. He couldn't make the save, so he just rescued his son.
Yep.
Anybody who saw the biography would have seen it. Anybody who remembers it knows. Just seeing Dusty laying there on his back with his son bloody and laying in his arms just crying. You could feel that emotion. I remember as a child feeling that emotion.
Absolutely.
I was 13 at the time,
he was
but I remember
he was
that.
Screaming, my boy.
Yeah. You're just looking like, man, and up till that point, you didn't see a lot of outside the ring activity like that. You would see a match or somebody, but you didn't see people getting jumped outside the ring. Now, I had seen Dustin in NWA, WCW before Dusty left as the Natural, but he was a really green rookie at that point in time. So I don't even know if he had laced him up yet, but so I knew who he was. So it wasn't like it was shocking to me that, they were beating this, but not everybody had seen WCW, NWA at that point in time. Not everybody had access to that.
Right.
So you got some guys looking like, man, he just beat this dude's kid up, out of the blue. They didn't know. And again, the curtain hadn't been pulled back like it is now. So it wasn't that apparent to a lay person watching a Saturday night's main event that this was an angle. A lot of the people that watch Saturday night's main event used to tune in for Saturday Night Live and wonder what the hell's going on here.
Yep.
And they would just leave the TV on because they were conditioned to watch NBC on Saturday night at 11:35. Now they're seeing this dude get mauled out here. I mean, Dustin, with that flowing blonde hair he had, it's covered in red. You got Dusty who's
nice
flowing
Kentucky
blonde.
waterfall.
Yeah, you got Dusty covered in blood, screaming, my boy, I can't believe they did this to my boy. I mean, when you just remembering the image now, that was jarring. So it just goes to show, though, when Dusty was, not only was he a good booker, but he could also be a great character.
Correct.
He sold that story like nobody else could have, because at the time, second generation, third generation wrestlers interacting with their previous, with their fathers, their parents, whatever the case may be, wasn't really a thing like it is today. Yep. So that was that was innovative of itself, him introducing his son and then having that kind of angle.
Yeah, and then, with Dustin, that kind of started the twilight of Dusty's career, where, the in-ring action kind of faded away, and Dusty as a producer, booker again, and then just a teacher, that's kind of where he wound up. And, looking at everything that we've seen about Dusty, and, unfortunately he's not around to kind of talk to him or pick his brain, but you kind of get the feeling that that was maybe the part of his career that he enjoyed the most.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
sitting there and just being the learning tree for all these people to kind of sit under.
Absolutely. And, as he was going, to be able to see some of the guys start ascending to that next level. And I mean, now, those of us who are believing would say Dusty's watching right now. I mean, could you imagine how proud he is of watching all
Smiling
his kids
from ear to ear?
And, because he called them his kids.
Yep.
Can you imagine how proud he is of watching his kids doing the great things that they're doing in the world of wrestling today? I mean, Roman and Cody, they went through it at their WrestleMania main event a couple of weeks ago or so. They laid it out. They said, hey, both of them are, no, didn't hold back at all. They readily were accepting of, we give all the credit of our careers to Dusty Rhodes, because, I mean, he made 2 WrestleMania main eventers. Yeah, he literally made one. And, I mean, he figuratively made another. So,
yep. But if you look at kind of the programming of pro wrestling within the past 5 years, Dusty's fingerprints are everywhere. Whether it's WWE, AEW, New Japan, Impact, it doesn't matter where you look, Dusty's fingerprints are there.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean talking about just, Roman, Dean, Seth Rollins, Cody, Dustin, ladies, Becky,
even the
Charlotte.
people that he touched that are, like, look at who Dustin's working with now in AEW. Look who Cody worked with the Nightmare Factory. All of that's remnants of Dusty. So, I mean, there's a little dust sprinkled around all over the place now, as far as the world of wrestling goes.
Yeah,
I think there will be for a long time to come.
Absolutely, man. I mean, just some of the concepts that this man had, as far as events, match types. I don't know, but I'm going to go on and say maybe he did invent the Texas Bull Rope match. I don't know if he did or not, but that's a
guarantee.
That's an infamous match with Dusty Rhodes. And then you got War Games, you got, several other match types. But the thing that I'll always remember about Dusty is he made you believe. And if you want to dig through the archives and listen to an episode, we've kind of talked about some of the things that he's done, but if anything, Dusty just made you believe. Dusty made you feel. He made you look at what was going on TV and go, damn.
You were invested.
Are they okay?
You were invested.
You were invested.
Whether or not it was Dusty himself, or, like you said, something Dusty created, you were invested one way or another because it was intriguing. I mean, Dusty, again, as we stated, he knew how to reach the people. He knew how to reach through that TV screen and grab a common man's attention and say, hey, pay attention to this for a little bit. And if you were a wrestling fan, or sometimes even if you were just a lay fan, you were watching.
Yep. So that's kind of a little trip down memory lane there for Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, yeah.
Again, him being the NWA, WCW, WWE, and NXT Dusty. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the flavors. Now, going back to what we're seeing current day with Cody. Cody is bringing back some of the nostalgia, bringing back some of those old storylines that Dusty was a part of.
Yeah. He's making it cool to be a professional wrestler again. I mean,
Yeah.
and I get it. That's AEW's tagline. We're pro wrestlers. We're not sports entertainment or whatnot. But because everybody is that way over in AEW and you got just a few that are more sports entertainers, that's kind of what makes them stand out. It's working the reverse way over in WWE. It makes Cody stand out more because he is unapologetically a professional wrestler. He's not, he's not shying away from it. Even though it's not a WWE likened term, he goes out there and says it on any given option because that's what he strives to be. He wants to be the best professional wrestler there is. So.
Yep.
And that's definitely a Dusty teaching.
So
if you're gonna do it, be the best.
So let's put our booking hat on for just a minute. Let's think about something for a minute. Dusty Rhodes in his prime, Dustin Rhodes in his prime, Cody Rhodes in his prime. Three-way dance. Who wins?
Oh, well, hell, Dusty would book it. So, I mean.
Exactly. Dusty would book it.
Dusty would book it. So, hell, Dusty would. And so it may go rounds. Like, Dusty may not put himself over in the first match. But if Dusty knew he was going to get a best out of 5, then, hell, Dusty's winning 3.
Dusty's going over.
But, yeah, if it was a one-on-one, one-on-one match, for the best, in all honesty, today, let's say we take them all from today, I would almost say he would put over Dustin.
I think he would.
I think he would put over Dustin because just watching the bio, some of the stuff Dusty said, it always seems like Dusty had that hurt in his heart that he wasn't really there for Dustin. And, he tried to pay that back by being there for Cody. But, I mean, Dustin always got the short end of that. So, in all, if we had to be completely honest and even keel, I say Dusty he would get Dustin put over in that match for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship.
All right, everybody. So, that's our stroll down memory lane today for Dusty Rhodes, Dreaming of Hard Times.
All right. Hard times. Hard times.
Hard times.
Hard times is when you ain't got no food on the table. Hard times is when them lights ain't getting cut on.
Amen.
All right. I don't know nothing else about hard times, y'all, so I'm going to go ahead and stop right there.
All right. We thank you for listening today. Again, hit us up on our social media platforms. Drop us a line. Tell us your memories about Dusty and what you thought of him as a pro wrestler. We're always willing to reach out there and talk and always interested to see what you got to say.
And do me a favor out there and never forget the name of Old Dust.
Old Dust.
Oh, yeah. Old Dust.
Old Dust. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And with that, we bid you adieu.
Peace.
Today's podcast was produced by SBP. You can find our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Also connect with us on our social media accounts. Search for The Bookers Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.